Good morning. It's 9 a.m. and I will call to order the June 15th meeting of the Saline County Board of Commissioners. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Shadwick?
Here.
Commissioner Spark?
Here.
Commissioner Vidrickson?
Here.
Commissioner Weiss?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Please join me for the flag salute and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If everyone can make sure that all microphones, phones, and other electronic devices are muted when you are not speaking so that remote observers can hear the proceedings clearly, I would appreciate it. Now, if Brad, our IT director, could instruct everyone on how to raise their hand in the meeting.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Brad.
No one else has joined the Zoom meeting at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will move into our citizens input portion of the meeting where citizens may speak on county government, usually limited to 3 minutes and pertaining to items not on today's agenda. If someone wishes to speak, please state your name and address.
Norman Mantle, Salina, Kansas. I hope our government is looking forward to the future about water use. We're in trouble. This water issue is all over the U.S. We're going to be left out hung to dry. So if you got a plan, if not, maybe you ought to look at it, because this water issue is getting to be a big item. It's coming, folks. Mm-hmm. Better do something about it now.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak at this time? Okay. We will move into the consent agenda. Are there any commissioners who wish to add or delete items from the consent agenda?
Nope. Nope.
Hearing no objection, the consent agenda consists of the approval of prior minutes as presented on 6-1, 6-3, and 6-8. Approval of tax roll adjustments, approval of accounts payable, and approval of public forum agenda as presented. Hearing no objection, the consent agenda will stand approved. At this time, we will have a public hearing. Item 1.
Public hearing for Community Development Block Grant, COVID, with Hannah Stambaugh, Deputy County Administrator.
Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am joined here by Emily Benedict and Bree Beck from the North Central Regional Planning Commission as our grant administrators for the Community Development Block Grant coronavirus, in which Saline County received back in July of 2020. During the course of this grant, we were able to assist 12 businesses with funds ranging anywhere from $2,000 to $40,000. The intent of this particular grant was to help those businesses pertaining to those that were outside of the city limits of Salina, so it was strictly for those businesses in Saline County, to help to retain jobs in the low to moderate income range as it related to difficulties with the COVID-19 pandemic. So these particular grant dollars, in total, Saline County received $132,000. $120,000 of that was used for those different grants that were given to 12 different businesses, and then $12,000 that is used for the grant administration piece of it with the assistance from the North Central Regional Planning Commission. All of the awards have been distributed, and this next step is to hold the public hearing on the grant to then afterwards answer any questions that you guys might have on it, take public comment, close the public hearing, and then the next step would be to actually request for action to move forward with the grant closeout proceedings. So I would like to invite and our North Central Regional Planning Commission, if you guys have any questions as far as the grant administration piece, they've helped to do the grant administration for this community development block grant for several different communities as soon as the money became available.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you guys have any questions about the grant overall or anything else right now?
One of the quick questions I have is how did you feel that the difficult or easy it was to administer the funds coming from the federal government and handling it through us to the end users? Was it a pretty simple transparency type of thing?
Collecting the information from businesses, I mean, I think it was more labor intensive than anyone thought it would be because they had to submit their invoices and then they had to submit proof of payment. And so that's a lot of book work.
That's a lot of timing.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Has the money been distributed?
Yes.
and so at this point, it's pretty much just a, here it is. Here's the financials, close it out.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for your efforts and your support and your time putting all that together and taking care of that for us.
For sure.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say, I was on that committee that helped with the disbursement of that, and I realize how much work you folks put into this, a tremendous amount of hours and paperwork, volumes and volumes of it. So myself, I appreciate your endeavor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I might ask that, refresh my memory on how many businesses did we decline to issue anything to? One? Hannah says one. So, well, again, I saw the guidelines that you had to work by, what the businesses had to reply to you with, and I know that some of them didn't like that, but that's the federal government rules, not yours, so
Yeah.
thank you for doing it.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public or wish to speak?
So I think if you just acknowledge on the record that you are opening the public hearing, take public comment, and then close the public hearing,
Okay.
just to make it formal.
Okay, we're opening the public hearing for Community Development Block Grant. COVID closeout is open. Is there any public that would like to speak? Seeing none, we will just close out the public hearing of the Community Development Block Grant. We will move into action items. Item 1.
RFA 182-21, Community Development Block Grant, COVID closeout with Hannah Stambaugh, Deputy County Administrator.
Have we been here before?
Yes, about the same thing.
Good morning.
So now that the public hearing has been held in regards to this, it is requested that the commission proceed with the grant closeout process. This also not only asks for the final documents to be signed to close out the grant, but also requests final payment for us to be able to make to cover the remaining costs for grant administration by the North Central Regional Planning Commission. Your alternatives for action today are to authorize for the Saline County CDBG CV grant 20-CV-113 to be closed out, or not authorize and provide staff with further instruction. The staff obviously recommends for the grant closeout to move forward, and we would submit final payment of $2,000 for the grant administration. That final $2,000 is part of the grant dollars that were awarded, so there's no budget impact to the actual county other than the staff time that's been used to help with the coordination of the North Central Regional Planning Commission.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Any comments by the public? I will bring it back to commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we authorize the Saline County CDBG CV grant to be closed out.
Second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA number 182-21, Community Development Block Grant, COVID closeout. Are there any further comments? If not, I will call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Hannah. We'll move into action item number 2.
RFA 178-21, Local Emergency Operations Plan, Statement of Acknowledgement with Michelle Barkley, Director of Emergency Management.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning. I am here to ask for a signature on a statement of acknowledgement that is required for us to submit our local emergency operations plan for its final review. However, before I do that, I'd like to provide you guys a brief overview of the plan, just to outline the commission's roles and responsibilities that are listed in the plan. So Brad, if you could pull up the PowerPoint, please.
Could we please close out the row of lights over there on that?
Michelle, I do not have that yet. Can you give me a few minutes?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And you had this already, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I could hold up my hard copy and
Flip through a fan of lights.
Yeah.
put a pointer on my head or something.
Well, I tried to keep it short, so I apologize.
It is a lot of information there, though, a lot of good information in this. Thank you. And I'll just, it is amazing of all the players that are involved in emergency management in this plan. I mean, I was really surprised and really kind of shocked of all the players that are involved in this. So it's, a lot of efforts go into that.
No?
Do you want to do that? Sounds good.
Oh.
Oh. Thank you. So if you want to switch to the next slide, I will just go over a brief overview of the plan. Some of the background information of the plan. Most importantly, the purpose of the emergency operations plan is to provide structure and purpose for an organization and jurisdiction and their responsibilities for the initial response. Our plan is an all hazards plan, which means that it has a range and a variety of disasters that it can be used and applicable for, including the scale, duration, and cause of an incident. Next slide. So these are the two Kansas statutes that are dedicated to emergency operations plans, basically just stating that every local entity is required to have an emergency operations plan. Next slide. So back in 2019, the state and federal government got together and pushed out a new list of modifications and requirements, causing some changes in the traditional emergency operations plan that you guys are used to. The goal of some of those changes were to reduce busy work, to regionalize the expiration of the plans, to also provide regional planning workshops to provide more help to the locals, as well as updating some templates and planning standards. One of the biggest takeaways from these modifications, and my personal favorite is the web-based mapping tool. There is a sample of one of those on the side. Basically, we are able to compile all of the information that we used to have listed on paper and have it more applicable. So in this map in particular, we pulled the two-tier result facilities that we have in Saline County, and we also pulled the schools that we have in Saline County so you can see what facilities are housing chemicals and how close they are to schools. Next slide. So part of the LEOP regionalization is to align the expirations of the plans to ensure that each region is expiring at the same time. As it stands right now, it is sporadic across the state. For instance, ours was supposed to expire back in 2020, but due to the pandemic, it's been pushed to 2021. They're planning on doing this by over a 2 to 5 year process of just reapproving plans for the next 2 to 7 years. The benefit is basically just for the state to provide locals better support in their emergency operations plan, which is also going to help us align with some other grant programs such as Homeland Security for some of our planning initiatives. Next slide. So this is just a map of the regional layout. As you can see at the bottom, in year one, which is where we are now, the North Central is set to have their plans be reviewed on August 1st. And then over the next 5 years, we will work to get the rest of the state on the same page as the region. Next slide. So this is just a quick summary and overview of some of the Kansas planning standards that have changed. To reduce the attachments, they created the EOP mapper, which takes out the ESF indexes and just makes them more useful. It also takes the equipment and personnel lists and created a separate supporting document in the plan that can actually be pulled out, so you're not having to rifle through the entire plan to find that information. It consolidated standards. Counties can now elect to not address any planning standards that aren't applicable to their county. In Saline County, we don't have any standards that aren't applicable for us. But the reason that I am here today is it did create some concurrent documents, such as the stakeholder acknowledgement, and then it just modified the layout of Kansas Planner, changing some terminology and things like that. Next slide. So this is the Kansas mapper. I will not be logging into it today just because there's some sensitive information and we are in a public setting, but I did want to demonstrate that it being a URL makes it accessible and it can be pulled up anywhere in times of disaster response. Next slide. So there are 15 emergency support functions. Under each emergency support functions, there are 3 different types of agencies involved. You've got your coordinating agency, which is assigned to the emergency support function and is responsible for the preparedness, response, and recovery phases of the incident management. You have the primary agencies that are chosen based on their authority, resources, and their capabilities. And then the support agencies that assist the primary agencies because they have specific resources or capabilities. Next slide. So I would like to note that the next couple slides I will be going over relatively quickly. I'm just trying to outline how many different agencies are involved in listed in the plan and the different resources and roles that they host. Yes.
Just a quick question while you're just getting into this. One of the questions I had is earlier you stated that you have some training available. I mean, do all these agencies, do you have training for each individual one of these?
Training for and with, yes.
Okay, wow, thank you, sorry.
So the first ESF is transportation. Their coordinating agency is Road and Bridge. You have a list of the primary agencies and then the support agencies for them. I would like to note that these agencies for primary and support can be either state or local level, as well as private or nonprofit sector related. Next slide. ESF2 is communication, and this is the coordinating agency is dispatch. Next slide. ESF 3 is Public Works and Engineering, with the coordinating agency again being Road and Bridge. Next slide. ESF 4 is firefighting, with the coordinating agency being Salina Fire, as they are the only paid fire response in the county. Next slide. And this is where you guys are listed under ESF 5 for emergency management. The coordinating agency is emergency management, but the primary agency is the Board of County Commissioners, with a long, extensive list of support agencies. Next slide. ESF 6 is Mass Care, Housing, and Human Services, with the coordinating agency being Red Cross. Next slide. ESF 7, which is Resource for Support, the coordinating agency is Saline County Administrative Resource Center. Next slide. ESF 8 is Public Health and Medical Services, with the coordinating agency being Salina Fire, the hospital, and the health department. Next slide. ESF 9, Search and Rescue, with the coordinating agency being Salina Fire. Next slide. ESF 10, Oil and Hazardous Materials, with the coordinating agency again being Salina Fire. Next slide. ESF 11 is Agriculture and Natural Resources, with the coordinating agency being Central Kansas Extension District. Next slide. ESF 12, Emergency and Utilities, with the coordinating agency being Emergency Management. Next slide. ESF 13, Public Safety and Security, with the coordinating agency being the Sheriff's Office. Next slide. ESF 14, Long-Term Community Recovery, is the coordinating agency is Emergency Management. Next slide, and the last one, I promise, is External Communication, with the coordinating agency being Emergency Management. Next slide. So I have cut out the, from the annex for emergency support functions, the responsibility that is listed for the commission. Your preparedness role in the plan is to help develop and maintain community continuity of government plans, which you guys do. Every department for Saline County does have a continuity of operations plan that they do maintain. Next slide. Any questions?
Michelle, I have a couple. You have to review this annually and have a new plan put into place?
So it's not up for official review every year. They're trying to make that more synchronized, so it's every 4 years. But we do look at our plan every year and update it biannually.
Okay. And one other, looking at the map of the North Central, does that mirror the hazardous material regional team and also the?
The Homeland Security grant one as well, too.
Okay, thank you.
So, are there any other questions?
No, a lot of good information there. Yes.
So I'm here to request that you guys sign the statement of acknowledgement so that I may submit the plan before the August 21st deadline, that it may be reviewed, and I will plan on coming back after the plan has been reviewed and approved by the state, to have a study session with you to cover more in depth the content of the local emergency operations plan, and then request for recognition and adoption of the approved plan.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners? Any members of the public who wish to speak? I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we sign the statement of acknowledgement to allow the county to submit our local emergency operations plan for official review as outlined in RFA 178-21.
Second motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA number 178-21, Local Emergency Operations Plan Statement of Acknowledgement. Are there any further comments? If not, we'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Item 3.
RFA 183-21, purchase replacement of 3 2022 Sheriff's Office marked SUV with Captain Jim Hughes with Saline County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning, Captain Hughes.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here this morning to talk to you about replacing 3 marked SUVs be used in the Operations Division of the Sheriff's Office. And these SUVs we're requesting are going to replace 3 2017 SUVs that are currently in service. And those vehicles that we're asking to replace range in mileage from $155,000 to $180,000. Or $180,000, I'm sorry. Don't put dollars on it. Those are miles, not dollars. But we did put out bids, and the bids were designed to encourage competitive bidding from multiple manufacturers, equipment vendors, and installation. And we got 3 bids that met specifications, and I have those listed in the RFA. They are from Traffic Control Services out of Wichita, Kansas. Their bid was $179,313.63, including 3 trade-ins. Shawnee Mission Ford of Shawnee, Kansas, was $173,565, including 3 trade-ins. And Marshall Motor out of Salina submitted a bid of $154,434, including trade-ins. Marshall Motor submitted the lowest bid, and the Sheriff's Office staff is recommending to award the bid to Marshall Motors. As far as budget impact, 2021, the Commission budgeted $315,274 to the EIP fund. Within that money, $261,994 were allocated to vehicle purchases. To date, $13,300 has been spent out of the pool of the EIP money, and that would leave a balance of $301,974 if you would approve this RFA.
Okay, and just the way you said that is you said remaining balance of $301,000. With this purchase coming out of it, it'd leave a balance of $147,000.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you for the correction. We would take the money out of the $301,974, and it would leave a balance of $147,540.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or questions by the commissioners?
Are these the vehicles for patrol only, basically?
Yes, sir. Yes, they'll be marked for patrol.
The mileage alone tells me that it's a necessary request, and we want to keep good vehicles on the road for safeties and reliability, so I will certainly be in favor of it.
Have you been assured of a delivery date?
Yes and no. Yesterday, the 14th, was the first day that Marshall Motor was allowed to even order these vehicles. So the 14th was the first day that they would be allowed. The bid did say that they expected delivery sometime by December of this year. So that's delivery to Marshall Motor or to the dealer, and then we would have installation on top of that.
So they might not be on the road until 2022.
That's very possible, sir. And from my conversations with multiple dealerships, that's kind of the standard operating procedure at this current time.
Yep.
Is it feasible to think that with everything that's going on in that arena right now with reliability, to be able to purchase vehicles and so forth, to perhaps change some of our requirements for the vehicles for the short term, just to be able to get vehicles? Is that a possibility?
Well, I think right now the way we are looking forward in our fleet of vehicles and the equipment we have, I think we are bidding the equipment or the vehicles we need when we need them, and the equipment that's in them. I think what's hurting us right now is probably just going to be the availability of vehicles. And I don't have a better answer for that, but I'd be open to having a discussion with anybody that does.
I mean, I'm guessing, what I'm saying is, if we were to take off certain amounts of equipment, and I would check that out with the dealers, that what would enhance our ability to be able to get the vehicles quicker? And again, I'm talking short-term, because we wouldn't want to take equipment off of our vehicles long-term, but if it meant the difference between, because you've got vehicles here with 180,000 miles on them, and if you're talking another 10 months or whatever to get the vehicle, it's going to have well over 200,000. I'm just talking about being able to get vehicles.
That's
So, I
a
mean, it's
discussion
something-
I'd be interested in.
It's something that you might
Sure.
talk over with your local dealers and just to see what they say. I mean, take a look at your requirements and say, we can get by in the short term without some of this type of equipment if that's what's holding up the purchase. That's what I'm saying.
Commissioner, maybe it's, my understanding is it's a chip shortage, which doesn't have anything to do with the equipment, and they're shutting down factories because they can't build, so that's just what I've heard.
I've heard similar comments also, but I'm just asking them to check it out. If that indeed is the case, then
Right.
we'll be quiet.
Hey, one quick question, Captain Hughes, is that in the past, what has been the typical time frame from when we order one and the time it gets into service has been in the past? Because if I remember right, even in the past 4 years ago when we did this, it was quite a while later when we even got them into service. What is the typical time frame?
A lot of that's really depend on the schedule of the installers we have. So there's times that we can get a vehicle maybe within 4 to 5 months after purchase. And then it takes, depending on the installer's schedule, it takes up to a month to get a vehicle broken down and outfitted again.
Okay. So, okay. Thank you.
Would it help you, instead of looking at this year's model, of looking at new last year's model that they might have on the lot that could be put into, I mean, it's not so much that you're looking at a 2021, you just need a fresh vehicle with no miles to get started.
And that's an interesting point, sir. At least Shawnee, Mission Ford, they did bid existing vehicles that they had, and I think Traffic Control Services did too. They bid 2021, so they had vehicles that were on the lot, and they were substantially higher in price. So, if that particular bid was $30,000 more with vehicles on the lot, so we'd probably have to pay for that luxury.
Okay. Yeah, I know vehicle prices right now are through the roof, especially if they are on the lot and ready to be sold. But second point then, your budgeted money the year before for the coming year, why are we in June bidding out vehicles? Why weren't we doing this in January of this year to maybe get ahead of this? I mean, you knew in January that you had the monies appropriated to purchase vehicles.
Correct.
Can you explain why we wait until June to go out for bids? The administrator will step in on this.
I sure can, but
The commission was considering some alternative vehicle purchasing procedures early in the year, and that delayed the sheriff's office a little bit in their consideration. But they have been working, I mean, they didn't just start this last week. They've been working on this for a couple of months now.
Thank you, Administrator. Yes. Any other comments by the commissioners?
I guess I'll just say one thing, Jim, that it's intriguing to me that look at the Marshall Motors bid versus the Shawnee Mission bid, which the vehicles are there, but, it wouldn't take too many, a transmission or two or something like that to eat up the money that's the difference in those bids, so just a thought.
Any other comments? Any members of the public wish to speak? I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the low bid from Marshall Motor Company for $154,434 for RFA 183-21.
Second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA number 183-21, purchase replacement of 3 2022 Sheriff's Office marked SUVs. Any further comments? If not, I'll bring it back to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Captain Hughes. Item 4.
RFA 184-21, purchase of 2 2022 Sheriff's Office marked SUVs with Captain Jim Hughes, Saline County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning again.
Hello. This particular RFA is to purchase 2 additional marked SUVs. As you recall, the commission granted 4 additional positions to the Operations Division of the Sheriff's Office, and we have those deputies starting to hit the streets now. We're getting them out of the academy and out of field training, and they're getting ready to go out and protect and serve Saline County, but we need something for them to drive. So the way we have our vehicles distributed between officers, 2 officers share a vehicle. When Officer A is on days off, B drives, and vice versa. So with 4 new personnel, we need 2 additional vehicles to give them something to drive. Again, we put the bids out to encourage competitive pricing, and the same 3 outfits were had given the bids on this particular RFA. Traffic Control Services out of Wichita for $120,542.42. Shawnee Mission Ford out of Shawnee was $120,310. And Marshall Motor submitting the lowest bid at $113,956. There are no trade-ins on these vehicles, as they're going to be additional purchases. The math is just a little bit different than what we went over before, but since you guys approved the previous RFA, we have a $147,540 in the EIP funds that were approved for vehicles and equipment purchases. If you guys chose to purchase these 2 vehicles, that would leave a balance of $33,584 in the money that was allocated to the Sheriff's Office for EIP.
Okay, and since, and quick question here, with the other 3 being trade-ins, they will, though Marshall Motors would take the equipment and stuff out of those 3 and put them in these new vehicles?
Yes, we went, the bidding process, we went through and looked at it very carefully, and there was some equipment that could be repurposed, and the equipment that we identified that could be repurposed, we did include in the 3.
Okay.
However, going from a Ford to a Dodge and 4 years difference, the footprint of a lot of that equipment has changed, so we did have to purchase some new equipment simply to...
And this new purchase here with these 2 new additions does include all new equipment going into these?
Yes, sir.
Oh, at that price?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry.
My question, Jim, is I should have asked this on the previous RFA, but your trade-in allowance, it doesn't say the exact amount, but those vehicles with the trade-in are $51,000 apiece. The new ones over here without trade-ins are $56,000 apiece, roughly. So is that about what they allowed you for trade-in, was about $5,000 per vehicle on the previous ones?
I think it was 16.5, Commissioner, for the 3. I have the exact numbers.
That would be, yeah, that's close enough.
Yeah,
because
16.5 for the 3.
Okay.
I have one question. You were allotted $261,994 for vehicles.
Yes, sir.
With the purchase of these 5, you will be going over that, but you do have other funds in your EIP. Are you not going to be able to get some of the other equipment that you budgeted for?
No, sir. Some of that equipment has been purchased that we identified. Some has been purchased already. And there's a couple pieces of equipment that we are not going to purchase out of that, not because of this particular incident, but we'd be getting some of the equipment we identified with the new facility, with the new sheriff's office and jail facility in the future. And so the equipment that was in the equipment fund, the $53,000, that had been purchased already, and the money is sitting there idle, and no further equipment is going to be purchased out of that money. And again, I want to stress it's not because of this. It was.
Okay. Any other questions? Any member of the public who wish to speak? I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the low bid from Marshall Motors for $113,956.
Second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA number 184-21, purchase of two 2022 Sheriff's Office marked SUVs. Are there any further comments? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Item 5.
RFA 179-21, Form 720, signature and payment of 2020 Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Fee with Marilyn Leamer, Human Resources Director.
Good morning, Ms. Lamer.
Good morning, Commissioners. This request is to get a signature from the chairman on the Form 720 form. It's actually for the 2021. That was an error I made on the PCORI fee. The Affordable Care Act imposes this fee on self-insured plans. It was originally scheduled to sunset for us last year, but it was extended to 2029. Our insurance consultant, CBIZ, does complete the form for us. So the alternatives for action are to authorize the chairman to sign the form for the PCORI fee. Do not authorize that. If that happens, then we would be subject to IRS penalties. The staff recommendation is to authorize the chairman to sign the PCORI form and pay the fee. The budget impact on that is $1,013.87, but that does come out of our insurance trust fund reserves. It doesn't come directly out of the budget.
Okay. Any other further comments or questions?
That's pronounced PCORI.
It's actually the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute.
I'll mark that down in my acronym list. Thank you.
Marilyn, the $1,013,000, that's the amount that the county pays?
It's $1,000.
Oh, $1,000.
Little over $1,000.
$13.87.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah, that comes out of that's built into our premiums that we
Okay.
set aside for insurance
All right.
costs.
That period in there is really small for my eyes. Sorry.
Any members of the public who wish to speak? I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we sign and authorize payment of the annual PCORI.
I'll second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA number 179-21, Form 720, signature and payment of 2020 Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Fee. Are there any further comments? If not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Item 6.
RFA 180-21, Saline County Emergency Paid Sick Leave with Marilyn Leamer, Human Resources Director.
Good morning, Marilyn.
Good morning again. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the acronym for that is FFCRA, did mandate emergency paid sick leave to certain private employers and public employers. That mandate did end at the end of 2020. The COVID relief bill signed into law late in 2020 provided that employers can voluntarily extend the FFCRA through March 31st, 21. Saline County opted not to extend that, but to create our own Saline County Emergency Paid Sick Leave with an expiration date of June 30th of '21. And that was as a bridge to normalcy and to encourage employees to stay home if they're sick, and so not to risk exposure to others. The American Rescue Plan Act, signed into law on March 11, 2021, provided additional financial relief for those employers that voluntarily extended the FFCRA through September 30th of '21. Although we did not extend the FFCRA and created our own emergency paid sick leave plan, the expenses are eligible for relief under the ARPA. Positive cases have reduced greatly, but we are not completely eliminated on those. So we are having some absences, and we do encourage employees to stay home. So this request is discuss an extension of the Saline County Emergency Paid Sick Leave Plan to September 30th of '21, just to align with the FFCRA. The alternatives for action is to improve that extension from June 30th to September 30th, do not approve the plan, or direct staff to come back with a different option. Would like to extend that just to align it with the FFCRA, but it is the commissioner's choice whether they would like to do that. No additional funds above what has already been budgeted for 2021 salaries is the budget impact. Available for questions.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Any members of the public who wish to speak? I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the extension of the Saline County Emergency Paid Sick Leave from June 30th, 2021 to September 30th, 2021.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA number 180-21, Saline County Emergency Paid Sick Leave. Any further comments? If not, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 7.
RFA 181-21, Employee Policies with Marilyn Leamer, Human Resources Director.
Good morning, Marilyn.
Good morning again. This request is to revise the following policies as presented. They have been reviewed by department heads and elected officials pursuant to policy, with the recommended revision as follows. Policy 2013A, Basic Work Week. The working hours were indicated for some of the departments, but not all of them. So this simply revises that policy to where the department head or elected official has the discretion to assign hours of work for their employees and to be able to still serve the public within the hours of operation for each office that is fixed by the Board of County Commissioners. The next policy is 30.01A, Pay Plan. The revisions reflect changing the wage increase from promotions from at least 2.5% to 5% at a minimum. Add in a paragraph for formal grade reclassifications. We did have a practice in place, but it just wasn't reflected in policy. Allowing the county administrator to authorize hiring candidates up to step 7. Currently, that is at step 4. We're finding that with the tight market on getting applicants, that we are having to increase the wages, starting wages for certain positions. And then also, when internal equity is affected by the external market and the hiring of new employees, sometimes it does affect some other employees in that same job classification. This would allow us to review that with county administrator approval to have a possible salary increase for that. And it also updates the process to request a classification review. 3009A, the sick leave, we had some duplicate language in there about allowing dental care verbiage to use sick leave for that, but it also, we are recommending to allow sick leave for any person residing with the employee's household. And that will generally cover caregivers within the household that may not be a direct family member. It could mean partners that are not married, foster children, and so it would hit all those with that verbiage. 30.12, funeral leave, allows funeral leave for any person within the employee's household, again, aligning with what we wanted to do with the sick leave. It also allows for funeral leave for an extended family member if approved by the department head or elected official. And then finally, it revises the prorated hours for regular part-time employees due to the increase in some variable hour positions. Previously, we used to be either 20 hours or 40 hours. We do have some positions that are 24 hours, some that are 32 hours, so it just prorates that amount. And then 40.54 telework. There is verbiage added regarding the two-factor authentication for those that telework to reduce cyber risks. The alternatives for action is to approve the policies as presented, do not approve the policies, or direct staff to make further revisions and present it at a later date. Staff recommendation is to approve the policies as presented and no additional budget impact.
Quick question, I should know this, but I can't think it, is what is the difference between a temporary employee and a regular part-time employee?
A regular part-time employee is a CAPERS covered position. They earn prorated leave time. Temporary is just that. It's for a shorter period of time. Could be less than a year, could be just a few weeks.
Okay. It caught me because it's like
Yep.
a regular part-time employee gets sick leave and all that other stuff, and I'm thinking.
Yeah, at a prorated, at
Yeah,
the half.
Right,
half.
but I'm still thinking it's like a part-timer even gets it.
We call them regular. I think some people like to call them permanent, but none of us are permanent.
Yeah.
So we call them regular,
Okay.
part-time.
All right. Any other questions or comments by the commissioners?
A couple of the changes made, I'm glad to see one of them, the ability of the administrator and human resources to adjust someone's pay up to a step 7, step 4. Doesn't bring those things to us that often, and also being able to go up to a step 10 to make those adjustments. So I like reading that in here. That'll help us a bunch.
Okay. Any other comments? Anyone from the public like to speak? I will bring it back to the commission for more discussion or possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the policies as presented.
Second motion.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve RFA number 181-21, Employee Policy Revision 20.13A, Basic Work Week, General Policy 30.01A, Pay Plan, Policy 30.09A, Sick Leave, Policy 30.12, Funeral Leave, and Policy 40.54, Telework. Are there any further comments? If not, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Commissioners.
Marilyn. At this time, we'll move into informational item.
Item 1, bond financing plan.
Good morning, Commissioners. County
morning.
Administrator Philip Smith Haynes. So in November of 2020, an item was before the voters of Saline County to approve a sales tax and issuance of bonds to construct a new jail and sheriff's facility. That item did pass, and so that is what brings us here today. In August of last year, in preparation for that vote, your commission received a financial projection from our municipal advisor, David Arterberry with Stiefel Nicholas, and Mr. Arterberry is back today with a revision as we look toward moving into the actual bond issuance this summer. He also has for you a schedule which calls for us to be back in front of you in the middle of next month to actually adopt the resolution authorizing the sale, and then actually conducting the sale and getting the proceeds in August. So, Dave, if you'd like to come on up and present the financial information and answer any questions.
Thank
Morning,
you.
Dave.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again, and especially in an unmasked state. So, as Phil was mentioning, when we were here last August, we presented to you some projections for how we anticipated that the revenue coming in from the sales tax would be used to pay off the bonds that were issued for the project. And we've got a couple of updated scenarios for you that show these cash flows. The first scenario is a very, what I would consider to be a very conservative scenario. It actually assumes that the sales tax that you are receiving right now remains stable over the life of the bond issue. In other words, it doesn't grow. The second scenario is what I call a more aggressive scenario, and it assumes that going forward, your sales tax does grow, and it grows at an annual rate approximately equal to the same rate it's grown at over the last decade, or about a little over 2%. So the first scenario I wanted to go over with you, though, do they have that in front of them? Okay.
Yes.
And I think the other key thing to mention that's a little bit different than where we were in last August is the vote that was taken in November authorizes the issuance of bonds up to an amount. And the scenarios that you have in front of you today actually contemplates two separate issuances up to that amount, and just in terms of the way the cash flows work. And so Dave will explain that part as well.
Sure. The first scenario is the one that up at the top it says no growth scenario. And I just kind of want to walk you through these again. And some of this should look familiar. It was almost a year ago, but a lot of the layout is pretty much the same. On the left-hand side of this report, you'll see in green the estimated sales tax collections. And you'll see there, the numbers begin in 2021 when the sales tax come in, but the first full year of collections that you'll have will be next year in 2022. And based off of an average of your collections in recent years, we expect that would generate about $6.2 million per year. Over to the right of that green column, you'll see the growth rate on the sales tax. We've assumed here again no growth rate in this scenario. You will see then a reddish or a pink column. This represents the annual debt service that we anticipate to be on this first series of bonds. And the principal amount of this first issue, right now it's been set at $75 million, which is less than the total amount that was authorized by voters. And as Phil mentioned, the reason it's less is because what we've done is anticipated two different bond issues. We anticipate the first issue, a large issue to fund the majority of the project at about $75 million. And then we anticipate a follow-up or a second issue in approximately 2 years to issue the remaining bonds for the project. And the reason we did that is simply because at this point in time, we don't know how much the project is going to come in at. We have a project estimate that we hope is a good figure, but things could change and it could come in maybe less than that or more than that. But the amount of that second issue that you would have would then be determined by what we would hope to be a good final project cost estimate. So hopefully within about 2 years, the project will be sufficiently underway and you'll have a better handle on the overall project cost so that we can do a final, what I'll refer to as a cleanup bond issue, and size that to the exact amount of funds that you need. So that blue box then represents the estimated debt service on that second or cleanup series of bonds that would occur in 2023. And then that yellow column represents the combination of debt service on the first issue and the second issue. And you'll see there the debt service is a little under $5.1 million, and that compares to the sales tax collections that we've estimated of about $6.2 million. That the ratio there of the sales tax collections over debt service, we call that the coverage ratio. And you'll see just to the right of the yellow column, you'll see that coverage ratio at about 1.22 times. So that basically means that you should be collecting each year revenue equal to about 122% of your debt service payments. That surplus that you collect each year is in the next column. It's about $1.1 million. That surplus each year would build up. It can't be used for any other purpose. It has to be used, set aside and used to pay off the bonds early. So the key thing to look at here then is, when will that cumulative surplus equal to the amount of debt that you have outstanding? And that debt outstanding is reflected in that column called bond balance. And you'll see there that in the dark blue, it's a little bit hard to read on my printout, but you'll see in about year 18, the cumulative surplus will exceed the bond balance. At that time, you can retire all the remaining bonds and you would cancel the sales tax. So I think this is pretty similar to the numbers that we looked at last summer with about even though the initial bond issue is sold for 22 years, we expect, given this pretty conservative set of assumptions, that you'd pay the bonds off in about 18. The next scenario, the one that I termed aggressive growth, basically what we've done here is, like I mentioned before, assumed that the sales tax would grow at about 2%, 2.2% per year. Your sales tax growth over the last decade has been pretty healthy. I don't know if you can sustain that, going forward for the next 15 or 20 years, but I wanted to give you a scenario that is optimistic. And, I would hope that maybe with a lot of the growth going on in the community, that maybe this is something that is achievable. But what you'll see there, the big difference here is, the green column, instead of being $6.2 million per year, starts growing, and it will grow pretty quickly, even with a 2.2% rate of growth. When you take into account compounding, that'll cause that sales tax to grow up a couple $100,000 a year in the not too distant future. The coverage ratios, then, if you look over at the column just to the right of the yellow column, you'll see those coverage ratios, instead of being 1.22 times, are quite a bit bigger than that, and they grow as the sales tax grows. This would end up resulting, if you look over at that far right-hand column, in the sales tax being retired, instead of in 18 years, more like about 14 years. So a couple of different scenarios. I don't know where the reality will end up, but I would expect maybe somewhere in between these scenarios, pay off the sales tax in somewhere 14 to 18 years. So, any questions about the numbers? I know there's a lot of numbers in front of you here, and I've kind of run through them quickly, but want to make sure you're comfortable with them and see if you have any questions.
I do have
The thing that I'm excited about is this early payoff. I mean, because if we've told the voters it's going to be 22 years to pay this off. It was our original assumption. And if we get this done in 14 years, or even back over here with the no growth scenario in 18 years, and we actually do say we're going to stop that sales tax, I think that would be an unprecedented move in government, particularly in our local area. They've tended to keep those sales tax right there, even though it might be paid off, and use it for something else. So I'm excited if that really comes to fruition and happens. So I appreciate the numbers and the estimates.
Sure. A question on these sheets, and when it talks about rate, is that interest rate? Is that?
Right. That's the interest rate. In this case, that would be the interest rate on those bonds. And each annual maturity of the bonds has their own interest rate assigned to it. But those are fixed rates that are determined when the bonds are sold, so those wouldn't change.
And even the 2023 bond rates, are they set?
They're fixed rates, but they won't be set until the actual bonds are sold. So the rates that I've included here are just estimates based on what I think the interest rates might be. I think these are probably somewhat conservative assumptions. Right now, I think if you were to sell bonds, today in today's market, the interest rate would probably be somewhere in the range of 2% or so. So I think I've been somewhat conservative here in what my estimate of the interest rates will be.
Okay, yeah, because you're showing a 4% in year one.
Yeah, that's a good observation. And we've had some discussions with county staff about this. Typically, when bond issues get sold, particularly bond issues of this size, the way they will be sold to the public is that it will be the bonds will be sold through a sealed bid process, and the county will receive bids from financial institutions, banks, and brokerage firms, and the county will award the issue to whoever is providing the lowest overall interest rate on the bonds. And that award is, the lowest overall interest rate is based on the coupon rate that's on the bonds, so the rate that you see here, it's based on that, as well as how many dollars they are bidding to pay for the bonds. So for instance, the way a lot of bids get structured these days is the interest rates on the bonds might be 3 or 4%, which is above the going rate on bonds, but the investors, the bidders will bid with a premium. So you might end up having a situation where you sell $75 million worth of bonds, but you actually receive $80 million. They will bid with a premium. And that premium is factored into their bid to determine the overall borrowing cost. It's kind of like if you're getting a mortgage, there's a difference between the interest rate on it and the APR on it. It's sort of the same thing. And so in this case, I've assumed that when you take bids on the bonds, you will get a premium on this first sale of bonds. And that premium would be available to pay project costs. And that premium is also why some of these interest rates are higher because of that. So it's a little bit kind of getting into the weeds of how bonds are bid. But it's something that we'll be discussing further with staff and with you as we approach the bidding day.
And one other follow-up question. On the sales tax surplus fund,
Yep.
you mentioned that there'll be a pool of money that is above what the payment is. Why isn't that applied immediately against the balance to whittle that down? Why do you pool that money and then make one big payment later?
That's a good question. When you sell a bond issue, investors will demand a certain call feature on the bonds. In other words, there's typically an earliest possible optional redemption date on the bonds. And usually that redemption date is probably about 7 to 10 years after the bonds are issued. Investors in municipal bonds don't allow, they're not willing to buy bonds where those bonds can be immediately paid off by the issuer. They demand some call protection. And so in reality, what would happen, these numbers probably simplify things, but in reality, what would happen is that surplus fund would build up, and then when the bonds reach their first call date, which is probably going to be in about 8 to 10 years, the county would begin at that time to use the surplus to pay off bonds early. And so that would actually probably accelerate the repayment a little bit. So even though it shows 18 years, if you start calling the bonds early on their first call date, you eliminate the interest on those bonds early, and that might help to pay off the bonds even sooner. So it's a function of the call date is something, again, that investors demand when they are purchasing bonds, because they want to know that they're not going to have those bonds immediately called away from them if you do have surplus money. Yeah.
Thank you for the bonds 101 class.
Oh, yeah.
No kidding. That's great explanation of this whole sheet and that there. Thank you for that question there.
It makes sense to me that you do a second bond because you're not going to need all the money at first.
Yeah.
And so that date is not set either. I mean, that could be backed off or brought up.
Right, yeah,
my
depending on your construction cycle, it could, I think 2 years seem to be realistic, but it could be 18 months, it could be 3 years, depending on how quickly your project goes. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to real quickly also go over with you here is the calendar of events for the issue. And Phil already touched on a couple of the sort of critical dates. The schedule here basically outlines all of the activity that is going to occur leading up to the sale and then the closing of the bond issue. And I've sort of highlighted some of the, bigger events and the actions that the commission will take. On today, June 15th, we're reviewing the financing plan. After that, and actually a draft has already been distributed, the offering document or the preliminary official statement for the issue will be sent out and reviewed. Our plan is to return to you then on July 13th, and at that time you'll adopt what we call a sale or a go-to-market resolution. And this is the resolution where you officially say, we want to go out and we want to sell bonds. Staff and legal counsel and your advisors are authorized to distribute the official statement and set a sale date and a time. After that occurs, we'll do things like finalize the offering document, distribute it to potential purchasers, get the rating. We've got the rating call scheduled for the 16th of July. All of that will then lead up to the date that we actually receive the bids on the bonds, and we've scheduled that to be on August 5th. And that's the day that the banks and brokerage firms that I was mentioning will actually submit proposals to purchase the bonds from the county. Those bids will be evaluated, and the best bidder will be assigned based on whoever offers to purchase the bonds at the lowest interest rate. And then we would return to you on your August 10th meeting, and on that day, you would officially adopt the bond resolution that locks in the interest rates and officially authorizes the issuance of the bond. So that's probably the biggest date. Now, when we return to you in August, if things have gone as planned, we would expect that you would adopt that bond resolution. So to the extent that you've got questions, we would want to make sure that they were addressed well in advance of the meeting on the 10th. After that, the transcript for the bond issue is assembled by bond counsel. It's approved by the Attorney General in Kansas. And then if things, again, go as scheduled, at the end of August on the 26th, the issue will close and the funds will be delivered to the county. So. Somewhat similar, but a little bit different process than the bond issues that the county and the Public Building Commission did last year and earlier this year. So. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Great presentation.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you. That was right on. That was Okay. Item number 2.
County Administrator's update with Philip Smith Haynes, County Administrator.
Good morning again, Commissioners. So while we're talking about the jail project, on July 13th, staff and outside assistants plan to be before you not only for the bond sale resolution, but also to have you approve design development. So the design development process is wrapping up by the end of this month. We had meeting with the architects yesterday, pretty lengthy meeting. We'll be meeting with them again tomorrow. The sheriff and I are also going to have a separate meeting to go over a list of things that they've given us on what furniture they plan to design into the building and what furniture we will be purchasing outside of the actual construction project. So we need to wrap that all up. And if you have not been down Pacific Avenue lately, there is a sign up. So go check that out. Future jail coming soon. So I will be on KINA this Saturday with the sheriff to talk more about the project and be happy to answer any questions about that. Also, just to mention a little bit about the American Rescue Plan Act. We did receive a draft form from our consultants for agreements with potential awardees. So we're working through that with Mr. Montoya, and we'll be back in front of the commission to formally adopt that for the money that you awarded to the airport authority. I will be meeting with the city later this afternoon to talk about cooperation between the two entities on our distribution of American Rescue Plan funds. And we also did receive a letter from K-State Polytechnic and Kansas Wesleyan regarding a request as well. So much more to come on ARPA. And that's all I had for you this morning.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Any commissioners' comments? I just want to comment on being in Liberal last week, attending the Kansas Association of Counties Conference. And quite honestly, it was probably one of the best conferences I've ever attended in my life. Almost every speaker, everything that they talked about was dealing with the issues that's going on in the county, the ARPA monies, the funds, the SB 13. A lot of great information. It was good, and I just want to bring to the table also is that sitting around in discussions and listening to our administrator have conversations with other commissioners, other administrators, the wealth of information that he carries with him at all times and just is available to help other people was just amazing. I just want to commend you and thank you for your talks that you had with everybody.
You're going to make me blush, Commissioner.
Yeah, okay, well, anyway, but anyway, it was very, very interesting. And the other comment I wanted to also discuss, because I've had quite a few emails and phone calls in regards to a 40 mile per hour speed limit out on Simpson Road between Crawford and Magnolia. And talking with the engineer at the Road and Bridge Department yesterday, and I kind of expected getting phone calls in Liberal last week of what it was about, and it is in due to the conjunction with the right-of-way purchases and the surveying that's going to need to be going on out there in regards to expanding the road width and getting rid of the sharp, deep ditches there that they will be starting that process, and it won't be finished for a couple years, but they wanted to get it. And when that does get all resolved, and we have nice slope ditches there on that 2-mile stretch, that it will go back to the full deal. But so if the public would just please put up with us here for a couple years, it'll go back. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to the table also. So any other comments? Hearing none, I'll just call this business meeting to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.